Hello nerds and nerdettes, and welcome back to the channel where once again we have a new video for you guys. I apologize for being a horrible YouTuber or content creator and not uploading last week. We did have two hurricanes hit my area a month apart, and storms like that really affect my work schedule, so I've had really zero time to do anything that I wanted to do. So to be back in front of the camera is exciting, it's revigorating. I'm pumped to get into today's video. And today's video is going to be a little bit of a different one because first and foremost, I'm admitting to you all that I broke my one cardinal rule of my collection, which is I only collected hardcovers. I've kind of hinted at that in other videos, but this will be the first video where I'm going to go over stories that I've read since starting to collect trade paperbacks again, and stories that I think you should be reading, whether it's in a hardcover or not, because they are just that good. But before we get into the books that I want to talk about, a quick reminder that if you are looking for any of the books that I've featured on my channel at any point, to use the channel sponsor, organicpricebooks.com. You can use the discount code STAYNERDY for $2 off your order, or when ordering 4 or more books, you can use the code STAYNERDY, ship it together, to save 5% on that entire order. It's a great way to save yourself some money, but it's also a great way to help support the channel a little bit. So thank you for each and every one of you guys that do decide to use my code. But let's go ahead and jump into the list, jump into the books. I'm going to be a little less professional than I typically am, not that this channel is professional at all, and just kind of raffle off a handful of books. I got quite a few, and talk a little bit about the story and what I think they have to offer to a reader. First up, we have On the Stump. This is written by Chuck Brown with art by Prenzy. I am very unfamiliar with the artist of Prenzy. Even researching them before this video, I think there's only 2 published titles that I saw, at least. If I'm wrong, correct me down below, because I really did like the art in this book. Chuck Brown is from Bitterroot, which I absolutely loved. It was in my top 10 best reads of last year, which I can leave a link up above my head if you want to recap on everything that I loved reading last year. Here we go with the tongue twisters. But pretty much what this is a alternate past where in the 1800s, 2 presidential candidates settled the election, fighting each other hand to hand on a giant tree stump, and that then became the tradition of how presidential elections, senator elections, pretty much everything got settled was on the stump where the 2 candidates fought each other. And this story does follow Jack Hammer. I had to make sure it wasn't Jack the Hammer. Jack Hammer, who's a very traditional guy. He has traditional values. He has a way of thinking. He believes things are meant to be a certain way. But he then eventually does get approached and potentially thinks about accepting the possibility of taking a fall against his next candidate, who is a new generation of politician who's actually trying, unbeknownst to Jack Hammer, to change the on the stump tradition to, instead of just a hand-to-hand fight, a fight to the death, which would drastically change how elections are handled and imbue them with a lot more violence than they already are. So Jack, of course, has an issue with that because him falling means him dying now. So he fights against that new wave of politician, that new wave of thinking. There is notes of obviously modern politics in this story. There's social dialogue, racial dialogue. There's even some mystical elements, especially near the end, where you have some magical properties being kind of explored when it comes to the politicians and a specific magical book and its abilities that it can give. So it kind of has everything that anybody could want. It has the magic, the fighting, beautiful art, thought-provoking writing. So really good story. I don't think I've heard really anyone talk about this story at all. And I'm pretty sure this is a one and done because I don't see a volume 1, and it does end with a panel saying the end. But if I'm wrong, if there's more to read for this title, comment down below because I would love to check it out. But it is a really good story that I don't think enough people have read. Next up is Year Zero. We have Benjamin Percy and Ramon Rasanas. Probably really butchering that. I apologize. Um, in the simplest form, this is a zombie story. In a more detailed way of describing it, is this is a story about humanity during a first initial days of a zombie apocalypse, and it really explores the humanity of the characters that you get to meet. You have a Japanese Yakuza hitman and how he kind of handles things, and how the elements of zombies is kind of just a afterthought. He has another mission that he's trying to pursue and achieve. And then you have a kind of formed militia of female Afghan women, which I think is probably one of the best elements of this story. You also have a young boy in Mexico who, in a lot of ways, post-zombie apocalypse, gets adopted and indoctrinated in some ways by what's left of the Mexican cartel, becomes a runner for them, and then he kind of has his own plans as well. And you also get to explore the woman that discovers the zombie virus and how it kind of all kicks off. So a lot of elements, a lot of cool aspects. I think the light being shined on the adversity that these characters are up against in not only just normal day-to-day life, but when you inject it with zombies, it becomes that much more challenging. And I think the focus on the sense of humanity and how all of these characters are different and handling it in different ways is really where this shines. I think if you read this and you really read into the details of the humanity that it's trying to portray throughout this story, and show you that these characters are from different places of the world, have different beliefs, have different lenses, different ways of handling things, then you can really have a lot to take away from this. This is only volume 1. I've only read volume 1. I think there's like 4 volumes out, counting a volume 0, I believe. But really, really good stuff. This was much more than a zombie story, and I'm a zombie guy. I love zombie stories, but this was much more than that. And BJ at Comics Are Dope on YouTube also talked about this series, and he has very, very, very good taste in comic books. So if you don't want to take my word for it, then pop on over to his channel and check out what he says about this title, because he's not even really a horror guy, and he really liked this title. So Year Zero, check it out. Whether you like zombies or not, there's something to take away from it for everybody. And next up is Superior. We have Mark Miller, Lionel Francis Yu on a title. Sign me up. I'm always going to be in line for those creators. I know Mark Miller is relatively hit or miss for most readers, but I think this is, other than Ultimates, this is probably his best work that I've ever read. So this follows a young boy by the name of Simon, who is in a lot of ways tortured by his diagnosis of multiple sclerosis, and it really affects his quality of life, his mindset, how he thinks of himself, his confidence. But on the flip side, he is also a huge fan of a character by the name of Superior, who, very similar to that of the MCU in our reality, in real life, is a blockbuster movie hero that has multitude of fans and movies, and Simon is a huge fan of this character. So of course, when he is approached by the devil himself in a monkey form, he does decide to use a wish that he is offered to become the character of Superior, so he is no longer wheelchair bound. But there's so many lessons to pull out of this. Sometimes the juice isn't worth the squeeze. Sometimes the hero that's within all of us is more than enough, and it explores those elements and more with incredible art by Lionel Francis Yu, who is known all over Marvel. I mean, I think he's done X-Men, he's done Superman, he's done Captain America with Ta-Nehisi Coates. I mean, he's been all over the map with comic books, and he pretty much draws and tells a story that's very similar to that of Shazam or Captain Marvel, but with a more kind of mature and dark twist on it. So Really, really good story. Absolutely loved it. So many lessons to learn, incredible art, incredible fight scenes. I mean, everything you could possibly want from a comic book is in here. I do think there is a hardcover out there, but it is long, long, long out of print. So I think this is really the only way to read it that I know of. But we are going to be probably revisiting this, and it'll probably get a hardcover eventually because this is the Millerverse, where the big game and big hunt and Wanted, Kick-Ass, all of those storylines all take place. Superior is part of that world. So really good stuff. Highly, highly recommend it. Don't sleep on it. Whether you're a fan of Mark Millar or not, this is a title of his that you do want to read. Next up, we have some Marvel trade paperbacks, which is none other than Spider-Punk and its sequel, Spider-Punk Arms Race, which somewhat recently came out. These two titles here follow, obviously, Spider-Punk, who is Hobie Brown in this universe. He is a Spider-Man from the Spider-Verse. You probably were first introduced to him during Dan Slott's Spider-Verse storyline, or maybe even the Miles Morales animated Spider-Man movies across the Spider-Verse. He is such an incredible character. This is such an incredible story. The art is so much fun by Justin Mason. It's all written by Cody Ziegler, who is a fan of comic books, actually writing comic books, which I always love to see. He's also currently writing Miles Morales, which is awesome as well. I love Miles Morales to have a good writer on him. But really, really good stuff here. This follows Hobie Brown, who is Spider-Punk, Spider-Man, and he exists in a world where there's an extreme fascist regime that pretty much runs the entire world. And the leader of the rebellion against this fascist regime is none other than Spider-Punk, and he is rising against this fascist regime, calling upon other heroes that can help him fight, gathering all of his troops against this fascist regime. Cannot say regime in this video today, but really, really good stuff. I think this needs to be in an oversized hardcover, which I know Marvel just doesn't do anymore, so whatever. But such good stuff, so much fun, shines so much light on this version of Spider-Man, a version of Spider-Man that people love. Probably needs his own ongoing. There's enough in this world where there can be an ongoing. The world building done by Cody Ziegler in this trade paperback alone, which is Spider-Punk 1 through 5, so 5 issues. I mean, unbelievable. Absolutely incredible writing. The art is so fun. It doesn't look like this at all, so I mean, you probably know that now because I've probably put panels up on the screen, but the art is so fitting to the character, so fitting to a character by the name of Spider-Punk. And there's a lot of social and political dialogue that takes place in here that can cause you to do some thinking. So if you don't like the political stories, then maybe On the Stump and Spider-Punk may not be your thing, but I do think there's a lot of nuance to the political aspects and political elements, which comics have always had political aspects in them, just with nuance. And here we are with really, really good stuff, really, really good thought-provoking storytelling, world building, everything you could want from a comic book, and I highly recommend it. And plus, it's 10 issues total, 2 trade paperbacks. Absolutely awesome. Pick them up. Next up is another group of books that I mentioned in my October spooky reads, which I can leave up above if you want to watch that video for a quick recap. But that is Stray Dogs, sorry for the glare there, as well as Feral. So both of these stories are by Tony Fleecs, who is the writer, and Trish Forstner, who is the artist. Hopefully I didn't butcher that too bad. So in both stories, you're going to have a very Disney-like art style meet a very mature story, and they clash in a very beautiful way. For Stray Dogs, you have a murder mystery from a dog's point of view, where Sophie, who is our main character, gets brought into this home full of dogs and has really no recollection of what took place, how she got there. And that's mainly because of the plot device that Tony Fleecs uses, which is dogs having horrible memory. and it pretty much explores them trying to put together puzzle pieces and find out exactly what happened, with details that are constantly fleeting their minds. And you eventually have them coming to the realization that their new owner is the murderer that pretty much killed their old owners, and how they're going to go about escaping, trying to free themselves, and hopefully not get hurt or killed in the process. If you don't like animals being hurt or anything like that, stay away from this one. It's kind of bound to happen with that synopsis there, which is very similar to that of Feral. Again, if you don't like animals being hurt, stay away from this one. This is probably even more violent, but this is a zombie story from a cat's point of view. You follow our main character of Elsie, who is a cat from a home. She has Patches and Lord Fuzzykins or something like that. Lord Fluffy Britches. I think they just call him Lord in the book, but Lord Fluffy Britches and those three cats together get in a crash after being captured by cat wranglers or animal control. And that vehicle that is transporting them ends up crashing, and they end up in a very mysterious neck of the woods where there is nothing but rabid animals that are infected with the rabies virus. And they are forced to try and survive, run, climb, hide, anything they can do to stay away from these rabid animals and not be infected themselves. There's heartbreaking elements in both books. Feral is a lot more fast-paced, a lot more fast-moving, brutal, and scary, where Stray Dogs is a little more on the softer side, but still very dark at the same time. Really, really good stuff, both of these stories. I love stories that play with the art and the story itself and kind of make them, rather than gel together, purposely make them clash. That way you kind of have a different experience when reading these stories. So really good stuff. Stray Dogs took the singles world by storm when it was coming back in singles. I've heard nothing but good things about Feral. I'm one of those people that is saying nothing but good things because it is that good. But I do recommend checking out one or the other, and then if you do like what you read, then maybe check out the other title. But really, really good stuff here. Next up is another group of books that I'm sure will eventually be collected in hardcovers, but they're not yet. First up is Void Rivals. This is by Robert Kirkman and Lorenzo De Felici. This is the first introduction to the Energon Universe over at Image. Hence why you have the EU, which is the Energon Universe. It's a new connecting universe that they are building over there, and it is absolutely awesome. When Void Rivals was announced, nobody really knew what it was. We just thought it was another Robert Kirkman big brain storyline that's going to be more sci-fi, more spacey, until near the end of issue 1, I believe, we see a Transformer, a actual Transformer in a Image comic book. So lo and behold, we then get this guy here, which is none other than Transformers by Daniel Warren Johnson, with art with colors by Mike Spicer, longtime collaborators. This is Image's Transformers title that began with Daniel Warren Johnson writing on it. Absolutely kick-ass story here. You have Transformers suplexing each other, clotheslining each other. You have a lot of mystery elements, just so action-packed, so fast-moving, so fun. Such incredible character moments, silent moments, thought-provoking elements. But in this story, one of the things that was very noteworthy when you're initially reading it, which I think is also at the end of issue 1, if I'm remembering correctly, is a pair of jet fighters get released onto Starscream, who is the main antagonist of at least this portion of Transformers. And when Starscream goes after these jet fighters, one of the pilots ends up surviving, and you see the name tag of Duke. Lo and behold, we then get the G.I. Joe comic books that then get introduced over at Image, which are part of the Energon Universe. This is by Joshua Williamson and Tom Riley, or Riley, yeah, I think it's Riley. And this is now Image building off of what was initially built in Void Rivals and now turning it into yet another thing, yet another part of the Energon Universe, which is the G.I. Joe portion. Such incredible comic books here. Wow. I mean, we are seeing a universe built before our very eyes. Everything has been great. Destro is a G.I. Joe title that's just finishing in singles. People are absolutely loving. Cobra Commander also is out in trade paperback, I believe. G.I. Joe, Transformers, and Void Rivals all being part of the same universe, being part of the same story, all coexisting in the same world. So awesome. It is Saturday morning cartoons. It's our childhood all wrapped into comic books and becoming its own very living and breathing thing. So if you want to be part of the Energon Universe adventure that we're all going through, these are great reads. You don't need to know anything about Transformers, G.I. Joe, or Void Rivals to jump into these. You can just jump right on in and start reading, but they are all so good. Transformers especially, extremely well done and a lot of fun, but that is the Energon stuff at Image. I'm sure these will get hardcovers eventually, but this is not comic books that you want to sleep on. Another group of comic books that you do not want to be sleeping on, I'm sure they'll get an omnibus or something at some point, but that is the new Ultimate Universe over at Marvel. It all started with Ultimate Invasion and then spun out of that. So Ultimate Invasion picks up with the Maker, who is the Ultimate Universe version of Reed Richard, who is essentially a villain in a lot of ways. Not a very nice man, but he wants to recreate the Ultimate Universe, but in his own image with his own twist, such as, for example, Peter Parker never being bit by a spider and becoming Spider-Man, until eventually you get the character of Tony Stark, who is actually a young teenager, a young genius in this universe, gets a hold of all of this information and decides to make the Ultimate Universe the way it should be. And that's where we then pick up with Ultimate Spider-Man and Ultimate Black Panther. So both of these stories are so awesome. Ultimate Black Panther kind of stays a little more true to the roots of T'Challa and Black Panther and Wakanda. You have some changes, especially to the character of Moon Knight, but all in all, it is relatively tame when it comes to the drastic changes that are done to some of these characters. But Spider-Man, on the other hand, is incredible. There was some massive changes done here, such as Peter Parker never being bit by a spider until he is married with children, married to Mary Jane with 2 children. Uncle Ben is still alive and a serious partner of the Daily Bugle. Kingpin is playing a massive role. Green Goblin has a more heroic stance in this universe. So a lot of changes being done here, but they are done so well, causes you to think and wonder where Jonathan Hickman's going to go with this next. I'd also want to say that we do have on this, we have Jonathan Hickman and Brian Hitch, who is the original artist of the original Ultimate Universe, or the original Ultimates with Mark Miller. Jonathan Hickman, and Marco Cicchetto does Ultimate Spider-Man, so you have incredible art alongside Jonathan Hickman's big brain storytelling that he kind of tends to do. And then over here we do have, just so I don't mess anything up, Brian Hill and Stefano Caselli on art. You also have a secondary artist, which is Carlos Nieto. So really good stuff here. Absolutely awesome. I'm sure these will get an omnibus, but these are the first time they've been released in trade paperback, so you'll be waiting a long time. And this is comic books that you do not want to wait on. These are so good, so refreshing. You can jump into this and honestly not worry about anything. You don't need to have any prior knowledge because this is a new universe. If you do have prior knowledge, then it will lend beautifully to this new universe. It is so much fun, pays so much homage to the original Ultimate Universe, pays homage to the 616 roots that are there. Such an incredible read. I highly, highly recommend anybody checking out this new Ultimate Universe. But if Marvel isn't your thing, we do have... Whoa. Book almost flew out. We do have Absolute Universe being built over at DC, which is very similar to that of the Ultimate Universe, but with a very, very dark twist. We just got Absolute Batman, Absolute Wonder Woman, came out the week of me recording this, and then we will be getting Ultimate or Absolute Superman, and then eventually Absolute Flash. So if you want a new place to start, a new time to start collecting and reading comics, the time is now, because with Absolute DC and Ultimate Marvel, there is no reason you should not be reading comics right now. Right now is a great time to get into comic books. But that does wrap up today's video. These are some of the trade paperbacks that I picked up, even some single issues that I picked up and I'm reading currently and having so much fun doing so. I feel so horrible telling myself for years now that I would never pick up trade paperbacks, and here I am having the most fun reading in the trade paperback format. Does that mean I'm done with omnibuses? Absolutely not. I have hundreds here. If I was done, I would be a complete idiot. Plus, it's my favorite format, the omnibus, but I can still splurge and have a little bit of fun with some trade paperbacks, especially if you go to secondhand bookstores. They always have tons of trade paperbacks. So really, really good stuff in this video. I highly recommend you checking out all of those titles if you can, because they are very quick reads and a lot of fun. But I do have even more titles that I've read and I am even more impressed with. They're probably going to be in my top 10 reads of the year, but I can make a separate, more focused video on those. But highly recommend the books that I talked about. But if you would like to comment down below and let me know what you're reading, that would be very, very awesome. I love talking comic books. I love replying to you all's comments down below, letting me know what you're reading or what I should be reading. Also, if you're watching this and you're not a part of the Illuminati, you can hit that subscribe button to join the community. It's my favorite place on the internet, and it will continue to be so because each and every one of you guys are so awesome and so supportive, and I appreciate you every day that I jump on to YouTube. And also, if you do me a favor and hit that thumbs up icon, it really means a lot and goes a long way for the algorithm. But I appreciate you guys watching once again, and of course, as always, stay nerdy.